Boss monsters are awesome. They're usually the reason you play your deck and take some effort to summon, but are worth the wait and investment. Their roles and importance vary archetype to archetype, but for the most part, they're the crown jewel of the strategy. And to me, the trio that epitomizes boss monsters are the three Egyptian gods, or at least their anime and manga counterparts. Obelisk was devastating with its infinite attack ability, Slifer struck fear into the opponent with its second mouth, and above all is the winged dragon of Ra, as it sits at the top of the god hierarchy and for good reason. It has 100 different effects, 3 different forms, and its own summoning chant.
Great beast of the sky, please hear my cry. Transform thyself from orb of light and bring me victory in this fight.
Check it out.
Envelop the deserts with your glow and cast your rage upon my foe. Unlock your powers from deep within so that together we may win. Appear in this shadow game as I call your name. Winged Dragon of...
But that power didn't translate over to the TCG. In fact, it's arguably the worst of the three, but Konami tried to salvage this with an archetype, providing new support for Ra and Merrick's slime cards. And in today's video, we're going to find out why Ra is the worst Egyptian god card. But before we get into it, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's get started. There's actually a lot of old stuff prior to the full archetype being released, but of course we'll start with the Winged Dragon of Ra. The Playable Ra was first released in the TCG as a 2011 Shonen Jump promo, but it actually came out a few years prior in the OCG. Cannot be special summoned. Requires 3 attributes to normal summon. Cannot be normal set. This card's normal summon cannot be negated. When normal summoned, other cards and effects cannot be activated. When this card is normal summoned, you can pay life points so you only have 100 left. This card gains attack and defense equal to the amount you paid. You can pay 1000 life points, then target one monster on the field. Destroy it. Obviously not as formidable as its anime counterpart, as it's missing quite a few effects, but that's because there isn't just one Winged Dragon of Ra, there's 3. The normal Ra, Sphere Mode, and Immortal Phoenix. Most competitive and even casual players are familiar with Ra Sphere Mode. You summon it to your opponent's field by tributing 3 of their monsters, and for 99% of Yu-Gi-Oh players, that's the only part of the effect they know, understandably. But if you're playing it within the archetype, it returns to your field during the end phase of the next turn, and you contribute it to summon Ra from your hand or deck, and its attack and defense become 4000. Probably the best card in the archetype because of its application outside of the archetype as a strong piece of interaction in the side deck. But moving on to the third form, we have the Winged Dragon of Ra, Immortal Phoenix. Its effect reads, cannot be normal summon / set, must be special summoned by its own effect. If the Winged Dragon of Ra is sent from your field to the grave while this card is in your graveyard, special summon this card. Cards and effects cannot be activated in response to this effect's activation, unaffected by other effects. You can pay 1000 life points, send one monster on the field to the grave. Once per turn during the end phase, send this card to the grave, and if you do, special summon one the Winged Dragon of Ra Sphere Mode from your hand, deck, or graveyard, ignoring its summoning conditions. Just ignoring the summoning condition for a moment, this is a good card. It's unaffected by other card effects, and the second effect is non-targeting, doesn't destroy, and is not once per turn. A genuinely good boss monster even if you only have access to it for a turn, but the summoning condition drags it down a little bit. You have to get Ra on the field, and then find a way to get rid of it, although as you'll see in the new support, cards make that process a lot easier. My only gripe with the trio from a design perspective is that maybe Sphere Mode should be able to summon Ra from the grave, because then the 3 would be able to loop back around, but it's not that big of a deal. One of the older cards that makes Ra easier to summon is Ra's Disciple. If it's summoned, you can summon 2 copies of it from your hand or deck, but it cannot be tributed except for the tribute summon of Slifer, Obelisk, or Ra, and you can't special summon monsters except by its own effect. This card has also seen some competitive play like Sphere Mode, but not for the reasons you might expect. The special summon restriction is very powerful, especially if you give the card to your opponent. Cards like Albion the Sanctifier Dragon in Branded Expulsion can summon it to your opponent's field and effectively end the game. Definitely not the intended purpose, but a purpose nonetheless. Mound of the Bound Creator provides level 10 or higher monsters with protection from targeting and card destruction, and when it's destroyed, you can add a divine monster from your deck to your hand. The protection is really nice for the god cards, but it's unfortunate that it doesn't mention Ra or any of the gods, so it's a little difficult to access, but a decent card, and I love the episode of GX that it's featured in. Metal Reflect Slime is one of Merrick's iconic monsters, and gets wrapped into the archetype with the new support, and it's surprisingly useful in the deck, although you really only need 1 copy. And the final card of note is Monster Reborn, which isn't directly Ra support, but as you'll see later, they really want it to be. Legendary Duelist Rage of Ra was released on September 25th of 2020, and introduced the Raw support and its adjacent slime cards. This set is one of the many awful legendary duelist sets, but this set does stand out as it brought the Ghost rarity back to the TCG with a Ghost Rare Winged Dragon of Raw. Beyond the reprint, we received 6 new cards for the archetype, and we'll start with the monsters, and the first one is Reactor Slime. Reactor Slime can summon 2 slime tokens during your main phase, but it locks you into Divine Beast monsters, and during the battle phase, you contribute it to set a Meta Reflect Slime from your hand, deck, or graveyard, and it can be activated that turn. The lock is pretty harsh as it prevents you from summoning monsters outside of the gods, so you can't even summon more slime monsters, but it makes a little more sense in a world that has link monsters. Without the restriction, this would basically be another copy of Gofu. But the effect to summon Metal Reflect Slime is really good because it can lead to the fusion monster, but another card that gets you access to the fusion monster is Guardian Slime. Its effect reads, if you take battle or effect damage, you can special summon this card from your hand. During damage calculation, if this card battles an opponent's monster, quick effect. You can make this card gain defense equal to that opponent's monster's attack during the damage calculation only. If this card is sent from your hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 spell or trap from your deck to your hand that specifically mentions the Winged Dragon of Raw in its text. This card is like a weird Spirit of Yubel. You can only summon it after you take damage, and then it can tank attacks. And it's very easy to trigger the search effect when you send it to the graveyard to summon Egyptian God Slime. This is my favorite card in the archetype as it kind of ties everything together. It must first be fusion summoned or special summoned from your extra deck by tributing 1 level 10 Aqua monster with 0 attack. This card can be treated as 1 or 3 tributes for the tribute summon of a monster. It cannot be destroyed by battle. Your opponent's monsters cannot target for attacks, and your opponent cannot target with card effects any monsters you control except Egyptian God Slime. It's super easy to summon, makes Raw easier to summon, and forces your opponent to address it by preventing them from targeting other monsters. But going back to its synergy with Guardian Slime, you can use Guardian Slime to summon God Slime, and then use the search effect to search Ancient Chant. Ancient Chant can search Raw and give you an additional tribute summon this turn, and you can banish it from your graveyard, and if you tribute summon Raw that turn, its attack and defense become the combined total of the monsters tributed, which is one of Raw's effects in the anime, and some of the other spells and traps also mimic the anime effects. Generally a really good card for the archetype, as an additional normal summon is crucial. The next spell card is the continuous spell Millennium Revelation. But we're also going to discuss Dark Spell Regeneration, which came out later in Battles of Legend Armageddon. Both of these tie Monster Reborn into the archetype. Revelation allows you to discard a Divine Beast monster to add Monster Reborn from your deck to your hand. Then you can send Revelation to the graveyard, and it allows you to summon Raw that turn using the effect of Monster Reborn, but you have to send it to the graveyard during the end phase. Generally not a great card. The fact that you have to discard a Divine Beast limits its utility, but it's pretty cool that you can search Monster Reborn. Dark Spell Regeneration is kind of weird, because they just needed something to prolong the duel in the anime, so it's one of those hyper-specific situational cards, but the TCG counterpart is a good adaptation. When your opponent's monster declares an attack, target 1 spell card in your opponent's graveyard, set it to your field. You can banish this card from your graveyard and send 1 Monster Reborn from your hand or set on your field to the grave. Special summon 1 Winged Dragon of Raw from your grave, ignoring its summoning conditions, then you can summon 1 monster your opponent controls to the graveyard. Also send the special summon monster to the graveyard during the end phase. As you can see, this is kind of awkward. In the anime, Dark Spell Regeneration lets you activate the card you take, and of course Merrick takes Monster Reborn to revive Raw, hence why the playable card effectively lets you use Monster Reborn's effect. But the odds of your opponent having Monster Reborn in the graveyard is pretty slim. Now you might be thinking, well, you can just pick any spell, so it doesn't really matter. And you're right, but there are a few factors to consider. 1, this card doesn't negate the attack it's responding to, so if your opponent can finish off the duel, this card isn't doing anything. And on a similar note, you'd have to wait till your opponent's turn to activate the card that was set, assuming it's not Monster Reborn. It could easily be destroyed, and there's a decent chance the cards in their graveyard are archetype specific and have no value to you. But regardless, I commend Konami for recreating this card in the TCG. But moving on to the next card, we have Blaze Cannon, which is interestingly always treated as a Blaze Accelerator card, making it adjacent to the Volcanic archetype. Its effect reads, 1. The Winged Dragon of Raw you control gains the following effects until the end phase of this turn. This card's activation and effect cannot be negated. This card is unaffected by your opponent's card effects. When an attack is declared involving this card, you can tribute any number of other monsters that did not declare an attack this turn. This card gains attack equal to the tributed monster's combined original attack until the end of this turn. After damage calculation, if this card attack, you can send all monsters your opponent controls to the graveyard. One of the better cards in the archetype, although it doesn't do much on its own, which is a bit of a common theme. but the other gods have their own signature attacks with Fist of Fate and Thunder Force Strike, although Blaze Cannon may be the best of the three. The True Sun God is the next spell, and this was actually released in 2022's Megatins, so we're going to hold it to a slightly higher standard because it's newer. On activation, it can search Ra or a card that mentions it, and once per turn, you can send it or one Immortal Phoenix from your deck to the grave, then send one Winged Dragon of Ra from your monster zone to the grave. The first effect immediately makes this card good, as searching is always great, and the second effect makes it easier to trigger the effect of Immortal Phoenix, a decent card that ropes another puzzle piece into the strategy. And the final card from Rage of Ra was Sun God Unification. If you control a monster whose original name is the Winged Dragon of Ra, you can activate this card the turn it was set. During the main phase, you can pay life points so you have 100 left. One special summon Winged Dragon of Ra you control gains attack and defense equal to the amount of life points paid, even if this card leaves the field. Once per turn, you can tribute one Winged Dragon of Ra, gain life points equal to its attack on the field. You cannot activate both of this card's effects in the same chain. This is the worst card in the archetype, but it does reference maybe the coolest Ra effect in the anime, when Merrick fuses with Ra and later defuses to avoid losing the duel. And I almost forgot Dangers of the Divine, which came out way later in Maze of the Master. It can effectively summon Ra from your hand or banishment by tributing a monster and paying half your life points, and then it wipes all other monsters on the field. This card can be searched in the Odeon archetype, which is a reference to the counterfeit Ra that was played in the anime. Probably one of the better cards, but once again, doesn't do much on its own, but it does help you get Ra out of your hand and is a board wipe, so I think it's alright. It's hard for me to point the finger at the people who designed these cards because it's not their fault. I feel like there was a lot of love put into the way these cards function and how reflective they are of the anime. The issue is that they took on the task of adapting a card that is just ridiculously complex. Ra does so much stuff in the anime and manga, and it's impossible to put all of that into one card. If you go back and watch the duels that Ra appears in, Merrick reveals a new effect basically every episode. Even in today's game where cards have 3 separate effects, an anime-accurate Ra would need an enlarged text box. Even the custom Battle City decks made by Venomous Romulus literally have an additional card to display Ra's entire effect. Just too much for one card. Another big issue is the lack of protection. You need to tribute 3 monsters to summon this, which is a big investment, and you can cheat it out with all of the support. Regardless of the method you choose, it does take some resources, and it's just too easy to get rid of. But context is important. The first playable Ra came out in December of 2009 in Japan. They weren't making boss monsters how they do now, and it explains why it doesn't have much protection. And considering the time frame, that's probably why each of the gods only have 2 effects. But I feel like Ra could have had a different combination, although the effect to gain attack points based on the tributed monsters would have been pretty powerful in early Yu-Gi-Oh formats. But to keep things positive, all of these cards work pretty closely to how they did in the anime, so if you want to feel like Merrick, these cards do a pretty good job of that, even if they are a little clunky to use. Retrains for the god cards are always on the table, but I'm a little skeptical as to whether or not we'll ever see them, and I have 2 main reasons. One, they haven't done it yet. Konami loves to milk nostalgia. It's basically the entire game at this point, and they still haven't retrained the god cards. And it's not like they haven't had opportunities with the Cypher and Raw Structure decks, or even the 25th anniversary. They seem pretty content just reprinting the old ones every couple of years. And the second point is that they don't really need to. As clunky as the god cards and their support are, they're pretty good at mimicking how they worked in the anime, as I mentioned earlier, and it would be cool if they were a lot stronger, but everything doesn't have to be meta or game breaking. But overframes would be pretty cool, and considering we got the reveals for the Sacred Beast retrains, I could definitely see the Egyptian gods making a comeback. But that's the video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like, and consider subscribing to the channel. How would you retrain the Egyptian god cards? Leave it in the comments below, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.